What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actresses comes face to face with a talk show host known for his sarcasm and arrogance? This is the story of how Diane Keaton, the Academy Award-winning legend, stood up to Jimmy Kimmel in a way that left the entire studio stunned. This wasn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong, it was a masterclass in grace, standing up to arrogance. And by the end, you'll see exactly why Diane Keaton walked off that stage with her head held high. The tension began the moment Diane Keaton stepped onto the set of Jimmy Kimmel Live. She was there to promote her latest film, a heartfelt drama about aging gracefully in Hollywood, something she knew better than most after decades in the industry. The audience welcomed her warmly, applauding as she took her seat, wearing her signature charming smile. But Jimmy Kimmel had different plans. "So, Diane," Jimmy began with a sly smirk, "another movie about getting older in Hollywood. Are we running out of topics?" The audience shifted uncomfortably. It was a surprisingly dismissive way to begin an interview with someone of Diane's stature. Her smile faded slightly, but she remained composed. "Well, Jimmy," she replied, "stories about women aging are important. We don't see enough authentic portrayals of what it means to age as a woman, not in this industry. Not in society." Jimmy waved his hand dismissively. Sure. But don't you think audiences want something more exciting? I mean, how many times can we watch Diane Keaton play the same character?" The atmosphere shifted. This wasn't playful teasing, this was something more personal. Diane straightened. "The same character?" she repeated, her voice carrying an edge. "Jimmy, I've played everything from Annie Hall to a mob wife in The Godfather. Comedy, drama, romance, thriller. What exactly do you mean by the same character?" Jimmy sensed the danger but decided to push further. "Come on, Diane, you know what I mean. The neurotic, quirky woman figuring out her life. It's kind of your brand." Now, the audience was silent. Even Jimmy's band and crew looked uncomfortable. Diane responded, calm but firm. "You might be confusing me with characters I played decades ago. Reducing any performance to a stereotype shows a complete misunderstanding of what acting really is." Rolling his eyes for the camera, Jimmy shot back, "Are we getting a lecture on acting now?" "Diane, this is a comedy show. Our audience doesn't tune in for acting classes." It was a cheap shot. But Diane wasn't rattled. "You're right, Jimmy," she said, leaning forward. "Your audience comes to see their favorite celebrities treated with respect, to learn something new about people they admire. But you seem more interested in cheap shots than real conversation." Jimmy laughed nervously. "I'm just asking what everyone's thinking. When was the last time you really took a risk?" That was the moment Diane's patience ran out. "A risk?" she repeated. "I took a risk aging naturally in an industry that demands women remain ageless. I took risks choosing complex, flawed characters over simple ones. The biggest risk I took was trusting shows like this to treat me with basic human respect." The studio was silent. Jimmy attempted to backtrack. "Look, Diane, this is comedy. We poke fun." "Sensitive?" Diane interrupted, ice in her voice. "There's a difference between comedy and cruelty, Jimmy. Between poking fun and being disrespectful." Jimmy shifted, trying to regain control. "You know what, maybe you can't handle a little heat." Diane shot back instantly. "Jimmy, I faced heat in this business since long before you were on TV. Directors, producers, critics say, but never a host who invited me on just to tear me down." Jimmy tried to soften his tone. "Maybe we got off on the wrong foot. Why don't we start over?" But Diane refused. "No, Jimmy. This is the problem. You think you can say whatever you want and reset when it suits you. That's not how respect works." Jimmy's mask slipped. "With all due respect, Diane, you're on my show, my house, my rules." That was the breaking point. The arrogance was stunning. Diane sat back and, with quiet strength, said, "Jimmy, do you know how many talk show hosts I've sat across from? Johnny Carson, David Letterman, Jay Leno, Conan O'Brien, Ellen. Every one of them knew their job was to lift their guests up, not tear them down." Jimmy's voice grew defensive. I know what I'm doing. Millions watch me every night. Do you? Diane calmly challenged. You've spent this entire interview trying to diminish me instead of having a real conversation. Is that what you call good television? You think you're above criticism? Jimmy snapped. Criticism? Diane laughed without humor. You haven't offered any, only vague insults without substance. At this point, the audience was completely captivated. Diane was dismantling Jimmy's bullying without losing her composure. Jimmy, you're not having a conversation, you're trying to win, she said. But this isn't a competition. Jimmy slammed his desk in frustration. Fine. If you don't want to play along, maybe we should just wrap this up. Diane smiled. Not a warm smile, but one of quiet confidence. She stood up. I've had this conversation many times before, with directors, producers, and critics. And I've learned that those who try to make others feel small are the ones who feel small themselves. Jimmy sat frozen, pale and speechless. You had the chance to create something meaningful today, Jimmy. Instead, you chose to embarrass me. But here's what you don't understand. You can't diminish someone who knows their own worth. Jimmy tried one last time. Come on, Diane. Sit back down. But she shook her head. Your audience has seen who you really are, and there's no coming back from that. As she removed her mic and prepared to leave, Jimmy offered a weak apology. If I offended you, I apologize. That's just my style. That's exactly the problem, Diane replied. You think cruelty is a style? The best hosts make their guests shine, not tear them down. She picked up her purse. Before leaving, she said one final thing. The real tragedy is I came here excited to talk about my new film, to connect with your audience. But instead, they've seen who we really are when we think no one's watching. As she walked off, Diane Keaton left behind a studio filled with people who had just witnessed something powerful. Jimmy Kimmel sat at his desk, speechless. The cameras continued rolling, capturing the stunned silence. This wasn't just a walk-off, it was a lesson in dignity, self-respect, and knowing when enough is enough. Diane Keaton didn't lose her temper or stoop to Jimmy's level. She simply refused to allow herself to be belittled.